Hello and welcome to D&D Daily. Today I'm going to be doing a character build, the Dualadin. The idea behind the Dualadin is that we're going to be a Dex-Based, crit, dual-wielding Paladin, get a bunch of hits in, try and get really good averages on critting, and then try and make those crits count with some big smites. Let's do this thing. Alright, so we got ourselves the Dualadin. I don't think we need any special content, so I'm going to go ahead and remove it, and if that ends up not being the case, I will let you know further down the line, but we will absolutely need our optional class features on, and I am also going to turn on Customize Your Origin, so both the Tasha's features. Nothing else in that portion mattered. So starting with our race, we're going to be a drow half-elf. This is going to do several things for us. Notably, we will be able to take the Elven Accuracy feat, and we will be able to cast the Darkness spell innately. Two amazing things for this build. So choosing our ability scores here, we're going to plus our Charisma by 1, our Constitution by 1, and our Dexterity by 2. We get Dark Vision, we get our Fey Ancestry, and we get our Drow Magic. And the language we're going to choose really doesn't matter, but I'm going to go Deep Speech. As for our class, we are going to go Paladin, and because we are a Dex-based Paladin, it means we're not going to be multiclassing. In order to multiclass out of Paladin, we need to have a 13 Strength, which we will not have, we can't afford it, so that means we have to go straight Paladin. Moving into our ability scores, I'm going to use Point Buy. So we are going to put 15 points into Dexterity for a total of 17, and we're going to do the same for Constitution and Charisma. So we are going to have 3 dump stats, but it'll be worth it in the long run. As for our background, I'm really looking to make this a bit of a roguelike paladin. Pretty unusual. So picking up the stealth skill and thieves tools proficiency is going to be a big deal for us. Because of that, we're going to pick up the urchin background. Now, if I was customizing my background, I wouldn't do the urchin background. I would do something more specific, but it would probably include the stealth and thieves tool skills. So at level 1, we get to pick up our proficiencies here. It doesn't really matter, but I am definitely picking up Intimidation because I like the idea of this being an intimidating character. We're going to be using Acrobatics to escape grapples because, again, we're a Dex build, so I'm not going to worry too much about Athletics. So I'll probably go into something like Persuasion or Insight. Let's go with Persuasion. Again, doesn't really matter. We get the Divine Sense and Lay on Hands, but none of that really matters right now. We're going to jump over to level 2. At level 2, we pick up our fighting style. So here, it'll eventually be blind fighting, but because we took the optional class features, we have the ability to take a different fighting style until level 4, where we're going to take blind fighting style, because the blind fighting really comes online at level 5. So until then, we'll pick up the defensive fighting style. At level 3, we're going to get to choose our Sacred Oath, which we are going to take the Oathbreaker. The main reason for taking Oathbreaker is it gives us darkness on our spell list. But it helps us paint a picture of the story we have. We are a half-dark elf who is an Oathbreaker. So maybe we had an oath to Lolth, and as we realize that she's kind of sketchy and maybe not the best person, and maybe we want to be a good person, we break our oath, and maybe we were like a Paladin of Conquest at the time to conquest for Lolth, but that we broke that oath. So instead of being like a bad Oathbreaker, we can be a good Oathbreaker. Or we can be a bad Oathbreaker. That's for you to decide. Moving on to level 4. We're going to pick up our ability score improvement. This is where we're going to grab our first feat, which is going to be Elven Accuracy. The nice thing about Elven Accuracy is it is a half feat, so we get to round out our 17 Dexterity to an 18 Dexterity, which is pretty fantastic. Not only are we getting super advantage, we're also increasing our stats, just like anybody else. Really fantastic, and that's really the boon of being a half-elf. Because half-elves start with a +2, +1, +1, which is pretty unheard of. Most other people are either starting with a +2, +1, or +1, +1, +1. So half-elves have an advantage in that regard, and we're seeing that here. At level 5, we pick up extra attack, and this is really where things come online for us, because we have the darkness spell. So here's how it all comes together. So at level 5, we pick up extra attack, and we're also going to dip over into our spells and look at our spells for the first time. I know I've been ignoring them. That's because they don't really matter that much. At level 5, we pick up darkness. This comes from being a Oathbreaker Paladin, and it's going to be core to our playstyle. Our main goal is to isolate enemies in darkness and to attack them. Since they don't see us, and we're using our blind fighting style, we get to make our attacks at advantage. Since we have Elven Accuracy, those attacks are super advantage. So we roll 3 d20s per attack. Because we're using dual wielding, we get that extra attack. So the extra attack isn't about the damage, it's about doing the extra attack and potentially getting a crit, in which case we can drop huge smite. So it increases our big smite opportunities. Now when you have 3 attacks, each rolling 3 dice, you're nearly 50-50 each turn to at least get 1 crit. So yeah, we're going to be critting all the time, and we're going to be able to drop these really big smites. Should we always drop a smite when we crit? No, but often. Now we're usually going to be using our spell slots for smite, but one standout is Find Steed. Find Steed is going to really help us take our first turn to get into position and cast Darkness. Something I want to say about casting Darkness that's pretty cool is that if it's within an enclosed container, the darkness goes away, and then if any part of that container is open, the darkness reappears. So what we can do is have a tongue piercing, and we can cast darkness on our tongue piercing so that when we want the darkness gone, say that someone's retreated from us and they're not within our 10-foot blind sight, we can close our mouths and the darkness disappears. We can see where we need to go, move there, and either this turn or next turn, depending on your DM, reopen your mouth and the darkness reappears. So we can turn it on and off like a light switch as needed. Find Steed is going to be really important because with a slow movement speed, we're just going to get in the way of everyone. With Find Steed, we can really be where we need to be the most effective, to have the most effective darkness, not only for us, for our team. That's something really important with this kind of build, is to keep your team in mind. We don't want to be stepping on their toes as much as possible. We want to isolate and murder, and control, and also like create issues for their archers, for example, but we don't want to get in the way of what our allies are trying to do, so keep that in mind. At level 6, we get Aura of Protection. Aura of Protection really well, it makes us so well-rounded. All of those dump stats we took, which were once bad saving throws, are now going to be pretty good saving throws. It's just fantastic. It's unbelievably good. And our good saving throws just become ridiculous. And all of that we share with our teammates and our horse. Just great. So if you wanted to multi-class, this is where you do it. And I would suggest going into a Shadow Sorcerer, because Shadow Sorcerers are going to give you a bunch of spell slots for smites, and they're going to give you more darkness opportunities using their sorcery points. However, you would have to change the build to have a 13 strength, so you're going to lose out somewhere, and I wasn't willing to make that sacrifice, but there is another build out there to do that, which would be kind of cool. At level 7, we get Aura of Hate, which is going to increase our damage and the damage of any undead around us, including enemies. So there is a lot of times that this is actually a downside, which is unfortunate, but it's also always an upside. So it's kind of a tricky ability, and it's not something we can turn on and off. So when we're facing undead, it's really bad. But if we have a necromancer on our team, or we decide to minor in necromancy, it makes our undead quite a bit better. But it will always make us do more damage, which is awesome. That's its big sell, is that our attacks are now doing more damage, and we're attacking a lot, so that's good. At level 8, we're picking up our next ability score improvement, and we're going to pick up a feat here, and I'm taking Sentinel. The reason why is that when we cast our darkness, we want people to be stuck in that darkness. We don't want them to be able to walk out and then take a turn. We want them to lose their turn, and Sentinel is trading our opportunity attacks for their turns. Big deal. So I'm picking up Sentinel here. At level 9, we're picking up 3rd level spells, and here's a good place to talk about how we are not shoehorned into one style. We have things like Spirit Shroud, which is an optional feature spell from Tasha's for Paladins, and it makes it so every one of our attacks do an extra d8 of damage. So if we just need to increase our damage output without having advantage, maybe we're facing something with blind sight, maybe we're in such an enclosed space that casting darkness would ruin our ally's sight. Now we can cast Spirit Shroud for basically mini smites every attack. And that's, we're talking 9th level when we can do that, but how about earlier? Well, we have Wrathful Smite is a very big standout smite here. We can fear one enemy, so maybe we're facing a boss, so we don't want to cover it in darkness so our allies can't attack it. So since it's one individual, maybe we want to frighten it with Wrathful Smite and concentrate on that instead. And Wrathful Smite is so good, because they're going to stay frightened until they start using actions to maybe stop being frightened. Wrathful Smite is a premier level 1 spell, and us as Paladins are some of the few who can take advantage of it. At level 10, we pick up Aura of Courage, making us and all of our allies immune to fear. Pretty awesome. At level 11, we're picking up Improved Divine Smite. Now, This would be an argument for why we should probably stick with Paladin, even if we did have the option to go Sorcerer. So improved Divine Smite gives us a d8 of extra damage for every single one of our attacks, and since we're attacking 3 times, that's more than most Paladins are going to get out of this. So we're getting more out of it than Paladins, not to mention that we're critting more often than most Paladins, which means it's going to be doubled in that case. So improved Divine Smite is just really, really good for our damage output. So from here, this is kind of like my period point. I'm going to just go to 20th level. I'm not going to worry about 4th or 5th level spells, but I will mention Find Greater Steed will replace Find Steed. The reason for that is now we'll have a flight speed so we can fly up to enemies and still do our thing where we smack them a million times in darkness. So skipping to level 20, we get Cleansing Touch, which is an okay ability. It's kind of weird that it can be countered by what it's supposed to counter. It's supposed to remove a spell, but if the spell's keeping you from using your action in that way, it doesn't matter. And it also says a willing creature, so if you have a charmed ally, they may not be willing to be uncharmed because they're charmed. So it's kind of countered by what it's meant to counter, which is pretty weird. At 15, we get Supernatural Resistance. This is just absolutely fantastic. Doesn't matter what level you're playing at. Bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing damage that is non-magical is common. So this basically doubles your health against those enemies. Crazy good. Your aura improvements, changing your aura from 10 feet out to 30 feet is going to be fantastic, especially because we're not the type to stick around our allies too closely. So this will actually make us more of a support and less of a striker, where up to this point we have been far more striker. That has been our priority over staying near our team. So we're different than a lot of Paladins that way. And at level 20 we get Dreadlord. Dreadlord is crazy, crazy good. Basically action, turn on death, and it buffs our whole team and just makes us absolute nightmares. Awesome. Great flavor. I love Paladin's level 20 capstone abilities, and Dreadlord is no exception. As far as ability score improvements, we're probably going to get to level 20 in both Dexterity and Charisma. Charisma for those excellent saving throws, and if we want to do some spell casting, and Dexterity just because we want to make sure we're getting our hits off. And that is the full character build. Tell me what you thought about it. Tell me how I can improve on it. How would you run it in one of your games? Let me know in the comments down below. We are D&D Daily. We release new D&D content every single day, so if that's interesting to you, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.